He pushed her up against the wall. He punched her in the stomach. She looked in his eyes and seen the rage that he had. He wrapped his arms around her throat and squeezed every breath out of her. She saw her daughter hiding behind the chair with tears in her eyes. The last thing that she heard before she passed out was her daughter saying, "Daddy, what are you doing to Mommy?" That woman was me. That was my 4-year-old daughter. But it could have been you. It could have been your child. Or it could be somebody that you know. I survived domestic violence. But there are women out there that haven't. That was the day that made me leave. I married when I was 20 years old. I had my first child when I was 21. I had my second child when I was 22. We were a happy family. But 2 weeks before our wedding anniversary, our life changed forever. My husband was in a motorcycle accident. He spent our anniversary in intensive care, followed by months of rehab. He had a neurosurgeon because he had a contusion the size of a grapefruit on his brain. His neurosurgeon told me that because of the brain damage that he has received, there could be spurts of violence. His brain was unbalanced and he needed time to heal. He recommended medication to stabilize the imbalance in his brain. Unfortunately, my husband did not want to take medication. He became abusive verbally at first. Anything and everything would set him off. Then he started putting his hands all over me. I took him to his rehab appointments. I helped him with his short-term memory loss. I tried so hard to put this man back together. I stayed. Yeah, he was abusive, but he was my husband, and he was in an accident. This wasn't the man that I married. So I made excuses for him. I lied to protect him, all the while not noticing the effect that it had on my children. I left the day after he tried to kill me. I woke up to red roses that morning, all over my room. This was his way of saying I'm sorry. To this day, I can't stand red roses. I get into a panic attack. The girls and him made breakfast for me that morning. Nothing was said. It just went on like nothing else happened. He went to work. I packed the girls, packed some clothes, and we left. I took $600 out of our savings, and I never looked back. There are millions of children out there in the world that are affected by domestic violence. Maybe you know one, two. Maybe they're your children. They may not be suffering from physical abuse, but watching your mother get beat, almost choked to death, does leave scars that people cannot see. My daughter Aspen became obsessive compulsive. She suffered from germophobia. She hated getting anything on her hands. She would go to the bathroom in public. She would wash her hands constantly, scrubbing away the germs she thought that were there. If she touched anything at all in public, she would scrub her hands raw. She washed her hands until they bled. I would take her to the hospital. They would wrap her. She would get an infection. She'd be on antibiotics. Constantly, we were there. I took her to counselors. I had her working with a mentor. Nothing seemed to help. I couldn't fix this baby. I couldn't fix my child. It broke my heart to see so frantic to get germs off of her hands. Just thinking about it today even brings tears to my eyes. The counselor that Aspen was seeing testified under oath in court that she believed that Aspen suffered from OCD and a germophobia because she witnessed violence in the home and she couldn't do anything to stop it. She felt powerless. Washing her hands was something that she could control. This was what gave her power. By getting rid of the germs, she was washing away the helpless feelings that she had. It has been 11 years since then. She still washes her hands obsessively. She no longer scrubs the skin off, but they're red, they're dried out, and they're flaky. I did this to my child. I may not have caused the domestic violence, but I stayed and she saw the violence escalate to the point of my near death. That is something that can never be unseen. Domestic violence knows no bounds. It affects every economic class, every age group, whites, African Americans, Native Americans, people from all over the world. It affects gays, it affects lesbians. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It can happen to anyone. It happened to me. It could happen to you. The Center Against Sexual Abuse and Domestic Abuse states that domestic violence affects more than 10 million children. Those are just the ones that are reported. 10 million children. It affected my little girl. And it might affect yours. Join me in speaking out against domestic violence. Tell your story. Let people know that they are not alone. There are places that you or someone that you know can get help. Call a domestic violence shelter today. You can call the National Helpline, 1-800-799-7233. Again, that number is 1-800-799-7233. My name is Angela, and I'm a domestic violence survivor. Thank you.